Hey, hello, everyone. Gia here, back with you all with the Uptown Standard Podcast Uncut crew. And today we have the lovely David O. David, how are you doing today?
I feel lovely. I've not been described as the lovely David O, but thank you for that.
Oh, there's a first for everything.
Yeah.
So I know today you recently formed a special committee on child separations to address the disproportionate rate of child removals happening in Philadelphia by DHS. So let's just come right out with the questions here, get started.
Okay.
So first, I want to start off just by asking you if you could elaborate a bit for our viewers, what really inspired you to introduce this legislation to create the committee?
So it's a very long story that I'll try to make short because it's not like one thing happened. As an at-large council person, I serve the whole city, and we're very accessible. And one day, someone approached me, an African-American woman, and started telling me about her daughter who was not with her. And it was not like a very cohesive story. And I could tell that she was not like the most astute or together person. But I did listen, and then I would run into her again, and she would complain that the daughter was in somebody else's care, and that the Department of Human Services had removed her daughter. And, I could not tell what exactly, like what the issue was. But eventually she brought to me a newspaper article, which actually confirmed what I was getting from her after a number of different meetings by chance, stopping by unannounced, all that type of thing. And that is that in a newspaper article, it talked about her daughter had run away from a situation, foster care, where she was being sexually abused. And then she was returned to the same person. And he was eventually arrested, prosecuted, and imprisoned. And I saw that what she was telling me was true. And then one day, unannounced, she stopped by when I was in my conference room with a little girl. And that girl was so happy. She was happy to be with her mother. She was delightful. She ran up to me. She hugged me. I never saw her before. And her mother told her that I was helping, but I wasn't doing much. I was listening. And I was just so amazed at how well adjusted and how positive this young girl was. I think she might have been 10 or 12. And I thought, wow, that's really, it's so terrible what happened to her, but I'm glad, think she's happy to be with her mother. And a couple months later, or less than that, the mother came to me and said they took my daughter again. They opened a file for no reason, simply to get my daughter, and they took my daughter. Now, that sounds incredible. It sounds like something very difficult to understand, but I took it at face value for investigative purposes. I began to look into it, and she had a former staffer of a different council person who she referred to, who was a lawyer, who had worked on her case. And I called that person, and she told me that everything was true, and that because she tried to help this woman, there was an effort to have her disbarred by the Department of Human Services, and she was now working in Washington, D.C., and she would not come back to Philadelphia. Now, I knew this person. I found her to be a very credible person. I never heard the story. I was unaware of it. And so I believed it was true, but I didn't know, is that like one problem? Is something that fell through the cracks, or was that a systemic problem? Like, is it one pothole, or is it 10,000 potholes? And how do you approach it? Because I'm just a legislator. I'm a council person at large. I deal with legislation. And then I was teaching my children martial arts, and my son got hurt when I did a judo throw on him, as I do every Sunday morning. And we have mats, and I've been an instructor and all that. And my 4 kids come upstairs, and I teach them because my wife wants me to teach them, because kids, you can't wake them up Monday through Friday, but Sunday morning they're up early raising heck. And so I said, listen, I will. She was at her wit's end. I said, listen, I'm going to start teaching them because she wanted me to. I said, I'll start teaching them 8 o'clock in the morning. And the way he landed, he didn't look good. I called my wife. We rushed to the hospital. And, you know, there a social worker told me that she was going to report it to DHS. And she said, it's not a big deal. And I said, well, what would you report? Why? And eventually she said to me, anytime an adult male comes to the hospital with a child that's hurt, like, you know, because of an activity, I report it to DHS. And I said, that would make DHS very busy. And she said, you should not be teaching your son judo. And I said, what if I teach him breakdancing, basketball, or ride a bicycle, or wrestling, or soccer? She said, anytime a adult male comes here with a child that's hurt in such a way, I report it to DHS. So DHS came to my house and they were very polite and they determined everything to be unfounded. And I had shown the doctor photographs of the room and the you know, all them learning martial arts and everything. And the doctor said, this should not be reported. I'm going to talk to the social worker, but the social worker already reported it. So once the DHS worker came out and said, there's nothing here, I said to my wife, we should talk to our son, you know, and we asked him, did she ask you anything, the social worker? And he said that she said, you don't like judo, do you? And I said, what did you say? And he said, sometimes. And that was that. So I went to the hospital to talk to the executives about what had happened, thinking maybe the social worker had a bad day. And I just wanted to let them know that, you know, this is what happened. But they told me they trained the social workers that if you have a gut feeling, no evidence, you just look at someone and you think something's funny, report it to DHS. And we had a whole discussion about that. And I just didn't think that was a right thing. So I told my wife, I'm going to talk to the DHS commissioner. And I did meet with her and she said, that is absolutely right. We want people, if they have a funny feeling, a tingly feeling, to report it. And I said, well, I read the Child Protective Services law, and that's not the law. The law is you have to have a reasonable suspicion of abuse. Mm-hmm. And, you know, because there are so many reports and because they teach mandated reporters to report anything or a gut feeling, they are overwhelmed with so many things, and they begin to investigate things that have no basis other than rumor, that type of thing. And even when they determine that the anonymous allegations are unfounded, they end up removing the children, mm-hmm. not just one child, all the children. And they separate them and they put them in different foster care placements, sometimes not even in the city of Philadelphia. And they are not returned. And years later, they are put up for adoption. And this is a case that's unfounded. Now, I could not imagine anything worse than someone coming in and taking your children from you, especially when they have no evidence of any harm to the child. And listen, many of these children are able to speak for themselves. So that is how I got involved, and I began to look at how the law should be enforced. And on the way, I ran into cases that were horrendous, where a grandmother takes her two children to a children's hospital, St. Christopher's, because when she got her granddaughter and grandson, they had been placed somewhere without their parents. They were able to reach her on a cell phone. She picked them up, but the 5-year-old granddaughter was defecating on herself. And she said, because she had been anally penetrated so often by her mother's boyfriend. And that report was made in front of medical staff, police, and social worker. DHS took the children, placed them separately, and then tried to return those two children to the person they identified as the rapist. Now, that is not the end of the story, because then they come to the grandmother's home and with uniformed police officers at like 1:30 in the afternoon, they have a piece of paper that they say is a court order to remove the third granddaughter. And it's not, it's just a piece of paper. I have it. And they take the child, the baby, and the grandmother has not, she had full custody of that child. She was the primary caretaker from a different daughter, and she has not had that granddaughter since, and they put her up for adoption. And this has been years. Now, this is a problem. People who believe, I'm not saying everyone is a problem.
Mhm.
DHS has an important mission. They do important things. They have a lot of good people,
Mhm.
but they also have a lot of abuse, and they have also a lot of harm that they do.
Mhm.
Philadelphia removes children from their families at a rate higher than any big city in America, 3 times higher than New York City, 4 times higher than Chicago. And overwhelmingly, those children are Black.
So,
Overwhelmingly.
so why do you believe that, children that identify as part of one of those racial minority groups or part of a lower socioeconomic status, why do you believe that they're being disproportionately removed from their parents?
Because their parents and their families and their communities are perceived as vulnerable and unable to stand up for their rights and unable to fight the system. They rarely take children from educated people with good jobs who are articulate in powerful positions. They rarely take children even from poor white people, although they do.
Mhm.
But when it comes to Black and brown people, they take the children. And as I said, even when they determine the allegations to be unfounded, they end up taking the children. And they set up a series of obstacles where you have to prove you're worthy of your children. Now, you cannot prove to someone who subjectively has a adverse feeling about you with no evidence of wrongdoing. The children even say they're perfectly fine, there's no problem there, but they won't return the children because you have not proven to them that you're worthy of your children. So, for example, you have to take anger management. If you don't take it, you're not worthy of your children. So you take anger management. You have to take parenting class. You don't take it, you're not worthy of children. You go jump through all these hoops and you end up, for example, they'll tell you have to move out of your parents' home, or you have to separate from the man you're living with. You have to live by yourself. You have to prepare a room for your children. Years into this, and you have completed everything, you don't get your children back. What you do have is a record that you're unworthy parent, right? You had to do all these courses and everything, all these certificates in anger management, child raising and whatnot. And, that is completely illegal in my opinion, and according to the law. The fundamental problem is an agency that is supposed to help children and help keep families together is at the root of taking children away from their community, their brothers and sisters, their neighborhoods, and isolating them where they are traumatized and easily victimized. And then when they turn 18 and there's no more money for everybody, they're on the street.
Right, right. And what, because as we've spoken about so far, and you've hit on, these children, they're being put up for adoption. They're being separated for long periods of time. And especially with these cases that come back unfounded, what long lasting effects do you think these children face after having being separated from their parents for, an extended period of time, or being put up for adoption, and something comes back unfounded? What long-term effects do you think they face?
Well, the adults that I've met that were separated from their families when they were children, they're very maladjusted. Many of them are still very hurt. They cry, even as adults. even as men, when they begin to talk about this process, they cry. The women, the mothers who lost their children, this is a very, very hurtful thing. And I believe that a part of the gun violence and the just wanton violence, I believe many of the people who are committing these murders and, horrible acts have some experience in family separation and foster care. There's a very large number of people in our penal system that have this experience. I believe I read that like 67% of California's huge penal population have some experience in foster care. And it's no indictment on foster parents. They're wonderful people. A lot of really loving people provide the decency of a home and a loving background. But there are also people who are only in it for the money. And there are also people who are pedophiles who like to abuse children that have made themselves available into this system. It is important that the agency police it, monitor it, protect the children. And, there's a huge amount of money that's involved in this system. And the system has become one where they do not support the family being together. Like if you have a leaky roof, the answer is not to remove your children from you and spend all this money and create all this heartache. The answer is help with the leaky roof. And what does a leaky roof have to do with bad parenting? So as I said before, over 85% of the cases where children are removed from their parents have to do something about money, call it poverty or not. Just someone is not satisfied with how you're providing for your children. You give them the internet, take your children. You don't give them the internet, take your children. You're too lenient on them. You're too harsh on them. Take your children, take your children. There has to be standards. And the fact that this has gone on this long, created this much damage, and has been covered up. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there. But no, I was going to ask what, if any, actions have been taken to address this situation?
So not much. I mean, part of it is that when things happen like the Sandusky case, a terrible, child abuse case, people start coming up with laws and procedures and things, which is well intended, but again, it creates problems. So when you get to over reporting, in other words, the idea that more is better is not true. If I just simply say, anytime you feel like it, like there may be some fire someplace, so you have no evidence, go pull a fire alarm. You will have fire engines racing all over the city and wasting their time. There will be a real fire and there will be no fire engine for it. And that's what we've run up against. There are children who need help and they can't get it. There are children in perfectly good homes that are traumatized and victimized, and parents and communities. The problem now is that when you run into a parent who needs help, they don't want to call the city because they don't want DHS involved. For certain people, not all people, for certain people, they don't want online school because now someone's looking into their house. When kids, for example, are beaten up in school and they don't want to go to school anymore, parents worry. If you don't go to school, DHS is coming to get you. I was recently contacted by someone saying, we're going to have these Ukrainian refugees. We want DHS to take the children and place them. I'm like, I don't think you want that. You better check that out very carefully. First of all, these kids don't speak English. They've been traumatized by war. Now you're separating from everyone they know, and you don't know what house they're going to. And that's a problem, right? Why should I, as an elected official, have to think that way? Why wouldn't I say, fantastic, we have a wonderful DHS system. They're going to get loving homes. They're going to be well, taken care of, that type of thing. But I can't say that. Right.
So I mean, which brings me to the special committee. So can you explain, just in a bit more detail, what the special committee on child separations really hopes to address and accomplish?
So we are limited. Let me first say that so everybody knows, because the laws on child abuse and child protective services is a state law. So there has to be changes at the state level in Harrisburg from your state representative and your state senator. But there is a city agency, Department of Human Services, that contracts with community umbrella organizations called CUAs that do oftentimes the work for them.
Mhm.
And they have to be held accountable to the law. First of all, they have to stop teaching mandated reporters the incorrect law. They also have to follow the law themselves, and they have to provide a transparent process where you know what the allegations are. They don't have to tell you who said it, but you should know what they're looking for. And then they have to provide you an opportunity to record your responses. What happens, the problem in Philadelphia is when they bring allegations against you and it's anonymous and they don't tell you what it is and they take your children, they say, don't worry, you'll go talk to the judge. Well, you won't talk to the judge. It's a closed courtroom and you're waiting outside when the social workers and the judge and the child advocate and everyone's in there talking about your kids, and they come out and they tell you the case has been continued. Well, we're never in there. So you won't get a chance to testify. You got to come back 3-4 months later. And that might be continued again. You'll come back 3-4 months later. And you might be upset and your child is no longer in the school because they've been placed with a family or someone who lives far outside of your school catchment area or even the city of Philadelphia. And your child might become depressed. And you may find that they've decided to medicate your child without your permission. A lot of things happen, and that is harm to the child. And so by following the law, by amending the law, by ensuring that the agency provides opportunities and transparency, and the court as well, we should be able to address it. Now, you are entitled to a lawyer, but that lawyer gets paid such little money that oftentimes the lawyer does not even prepare for the case, let alone show up. So they tell you get a free lawyer, but you get a lawyer who is not paid enough money to pay for parking and gas, let alone read your file. And they are dependent on DHS and the judge to get their appointments. And so they're not oftentimes arguing. And that's why people want to get a private lawyer, but they can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And so who is being targeted? People can afford a lawyer? No, people who they believe cannot afford a lawyer based on their race, based on their appearance, based on their zip code. Those are all illegal, unconstitutional, wrong things, and the damage is severe. And the community needs to step forward to really, if they don't know about this, look into it. If you know about it, act on it. And if you are in DHS and a good person, don't be afraid about speaking up. You will have to speak up.
Yeah. Well, David, I really appreciate, your insight today, speaking about your special committee. Are there any, last minute comments that you'd like to make, on this topic?
Yes.
Please have the floor.
This Friday, April 22nd, we're having a rally in Love Park at 12 noon. Come on out, support. You don't have to know anything about this subject other than you love children. You don't want to be victimized. You're going to stand with mothers who've lost their children wrongfully. My co-chair is Councilwoman Cindy Bass. One of our members is Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. She's on our special committee. Her brother was put in foster care. She didn't see him for like 40 years. And so there's a lot of people. We have Dr. George Fraser, who was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by President Obama. He's a business mentor, very well respected, but he was in foster care. And he suffered the pain of foster care. He's going to give a positive message. And we will have some of our lady champions, our aunts and grandmothers and moms who have been championing this. But what we're doing is we're publishing the report. We're going to send it to Harrisburg. We want people to know about it because this has been so covered up and hidden. People are afraid of DHS. They're afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of a lot of things. But, if you're afraid, you're allowing these children to be abused.
Well, hey, everyone, you heard it here first. Friday, 12, Love Park. Make sure you're there. And David, once again, it is, as always, lovely to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for putting me on and sharing the news.
Of course. All right. Bye-bye.